My name is Roger Ball. I'm the Acting Director for NEMA, and I'm going to provide you with an update on the state of national emergency and activity across the country. I'm joined by colleagues from New Zealand Police and Fire and Emergency New Zealand. I'll introduce those at the end. So I'm going to give you an update that is focused sort of more towards the eastern part of New Zealand. I mean, obviously we do still have teams working across the whole of the country that is impacted by the current event. But today we are wanting to just fill you in with a little bit more detail on what's happening in those areas where life safety and urgent relief efforts are very much underway and in play. Yesterday I had the opportunity to be in the Hawke's Bay with the Prime Minister's group, and Minister McAnulty and myself also managed to get to Wairoa. And the day before that I had an opportunity to be on the ground again with the PM's group, but at that stage in Tairāwhiti. For me, that gave me an opportunity to see the impacts on the ground, to see some of the human stories that are unfolding, the contents of people's homes out on streets, the silt, the impact for animals and livelihoods, but also just to see the amazing efforts of first responders, volunteers, iwi groups, the public, agencies, contractors. In my experience, this is a massive event for New Zealand. It's certainly the biggest weather event damage from that I've seen, and this is going to be a major focus for New Zealand and for the responding agencies for some time. We now know that 9 people have lost their lives, and our emergency services hold grave fears for others. I want to offer my heartfelt sympathies to their families. One of our biggest priorities is making contact with isolated communities and then getting supplies to them urgently. I spoke this morning to the Tairāwhiti Civil Defence Emergency Management Group. They've now made limited contact with about 90% of their communities and are aiming to make contact with 100% by the end of today. As an example of how they're doing that, a volunteer support officer is driving from Tairāwhiti Springs up to Te Araroa, making contact with volunteer brigades along the coast to check on them and see what they need. In Whatatutu, the community there will be receiving visits from 2 helicopters today with supplies, including for the people sheltering in the school there. And I understand 3 other communities in Tairāwhiti will also be visited by helicopters today. I also spoke to the Civil Defence Emergency Management Group in the Hawke's Bay this morning for an update. Their highest priority is reaching those isolated and rural communities today. For example, in Wairoa, I understand that by the end of today they will have completed their rapid assessments of the entire district, and so that's fantastic progress there. They are working urgently to connect with other isolated and rural communities across the Hawke's Bay region today. Getting fuel into Wairoa has been a priority, and I'm able to let you know that BP have informed us that they'll be getting fuel hopefully into Wairoa today by vehicle now that the road, the Northern Road, is passable to essential supplies. Cell towers are also a priority so that people can contact their loved ones to let them know they're okay. In the Hawke's Bay, we do now have 90% of cell towers operating and 80% in Northland. Only 30% are operating in Gisborne, but this will improve significantly once the chorus fibre is repaired, hopefully by the end of this weekend. You'll have seen reports that some power came back on in Napier last night, which was great news. About 24% of households in Napier now have electricity, and urgent work continues to bring more online as quickly as possible. Just before 7 a.m. today, the Gisborne water plant kicked back in. This is thanks to specialist crews who worked all night to install a replacement unit that had been delivered late yesterday by a C-130 Hercules. As of last night, there's also now a water treatment unit in Gisborne which will be up and running soon. This unit can do 4.5 million litres per day. We're working with Tairāwhiti District Council on more contingency plans as well. Today, a health protection officer, which is a public health officer, is being flown into Tairāwhiti Springs with goods and medical supplies to support the community there. One thing I do want to mention is that we've received concerning reports of some people being aggressive and threatening to those delivering and restocking essential supplies. Please, I do understand the stress that many of you will be going through, but it's absolutely essential that the people delivering supplies are able to do their job without anybody hassling them. Otherwise, it's going to take far longer to get everything restocked. I'll leave it to police to speak to this in more detail. I know many essential services staff have been going above and beyond due to trouble getting staff in and out of the affected regions. For example, corrections officers and staff at Hawke's Bay Regional Prison have been putting in extra hours, coming in on their days off and even sleeping on site to keep the prison operating safely. The staff have all been impacted by this event personally in one way or another, but they're putting their community's needs above their own. I know the same is true of all of our essential services staff who are involved in this response. The kindness and generosity of New Zealanders in the wake of the cyclone has been overwhelming. Time and again we have shown we're a nation that will band together and look out for one another in times of need, and that is something to be very proud of. However, monetary donations are the single most helpful thing that Kiwis can do right now, no matter how big or small. These donations enable support organisations to provide exactly what is needed to those most affected. The donation of physical goods, whilst extremely generous and well-intentioned, is not always the most effective way to help right now in this minute. Often these donations don't match exactly what communities need, resulting in an oversupply and lack of capacity to manage this. This is the feedback we're getting overwhelmingly from those on the ground. Instead, we're encouraging donations to relief funds, of which there are many. In the coming days, details will be confirmed on mayoral relief funds, which will allow people to donate to the specific regions. A brief recap of NZDF activity. 700 members of our Defence Force are out on the ground doing everything they can to reach isolated communities. With 4 aircraft, 7 helicopters, 2 ships and 58 trucks, they are providing support from ground, air and sea. The HMS NZS Canterbury is berthed in Lyttelton today and is expected to set sail to Hawke's Bay early next week with lots of goods including bridging supplies, food and water, hygiene products and baby supplies, as well as personnel and equipment from agencies such as Police and St John. The National Emergency Agency is coordinating with the regional civil defence groups, making sure they're equipped with the tools and information they need to support the communities affected. If you need support, the best thing you can do is reach out directly to your local civil defence group, either via social media or using the contact details on their website. At this stage in the emergency response, the priority is addressing people's basic needs: food, water, shelter. As we move through the coming days and weeks, the civil defence approach will change from high-level community needs to more individual focus aimed at meeting people's specific needs. As we continue to move through the different stages of response, we'll be sharing more information on public health and how people can keep themselves healthy and safe through the clean-up process. I'll now pass to Deputy Commissioner Glenn Dunbier of the New Zealand Police.
Thank you, Paul. Kia ora koutou. My name is Glenn Dunbier, Deputy Commissioner for New Zealand Police. Police continue to put staff and resources into Eastern Police District to assist local staff and other agencies in responding to the cyclone. The conditions there are tough, and they're tough for everybody. I echo the words of Commissioner Costa yesterday and thank not only our police staff but everyone who's putting in long hours to help others when in some cases they've suffered their own losses through the cyclone. We've got about 100 extra police staff on the ground in Eastern District from all around the country, assisting our local staff there. They're working on both locating those who have not made contact and are isolated, and on conducting foot patrols to help provide reassurance and keep people and property safe. We also have more staff at an administrative level working hard to match up the reports of people unaccounted for with reports of those who are safe. As of 9 p.m. yesterday, there have been 4,928 reports of uncontactable people registered, but 885 reports from people registering that they are safe. We have a dedicated team of around 100 people working on matching up these reports. We would encourage anyone who has not yet reported themselves as safe to go online if they're able to the police website and fill out the Register I'm Alive form. as well as if you've registered someone as uncontactable and you've since made contact with that person, please go back into the same online report and update it. As Paul said, 9 people have been confirmed dead following Cyclone Gabrielle, 7 in the Eastern District and 2 in Wairoa and Northland.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Paul Turner from Fire and Emergency New Zealand.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Paul Turner. I'm the National Manager Response Capability for Fire and Emergency. It's been a very long and difficult week for our fire and emergency crews. FENS and police are working together to visit isolated and vulnerable communities to conduct welfare checks on behalf of civil defence. During Cyclone Gabrielle, 450 trucks responded to more than 2,100 incidents throughout the upper and eastern North Island. I want to take time to acknowledge the Wairoa Volunteer Fire Brigade, who've shown incredible dedication to their community through an extremely difficult time. The wellbeing and the welfare of our people is our #1 priority, and we're doing everything we can to support our people. In terms of the USAR deployment, the first of the NEMA USAR Australian contingent of 8 staff arrived on Friday. The second contingent is arriving today in groups of 12 and 5. 12 are inbound now and 5 later on today. Most of that deployment will head to the Hawke's Bay, assisting with rapid damage assessments and providing technical expertise with wide area mapping of the impacted communities, and some specialist staff will be based in our NCC in Wellington. Yesterday's activities were urban search and rescue personnel continued to undertake rapid disaster assessments across the Hawke's Bay region yesterday. There were 58 incidents related to Cyclone Gabrielle and 290 other incident types. We completed 980 building assessments. 202 of those properties sustained moderate to being totally damaged. The USAR technicians are now working with building officers to prioritise which damaged properties should be worked on first. And today's activity, we've got 90 search and rescue personnel deployed across the North Island, 5 more arriving from Australia tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Paul. I think we've got time for questions.
How many deaths are people going to need to be prepared for?
Look, at this stage, we have a confirmed number. Beyond that, we don't have any further information, but I might ask my colleague from New Zealand Police to speak to that further.
So we've released information on all the deaths that we're aware of to now. We do not have any other bodies that are with us, despite rumours of this being rife through the community over the last few days. And we would continue with our coronial process, which is quite strict in identifying bodies as we get them. But as of now, every body that we have found has been notified to you.
Sort of nothing you're not telling us.
Correct.
What's the process from finding a body to telling the media that another one has been found?
So it's a coronial process involving identification and causation. It's the same process that occurs throughout every sudden death throughout the year. It is a strict process that we will follow, but here today I'm telling you that we do not have unaccounted bodies with us that you have not heard of.
There's a report this morning on the 10th, the police investigating a 10th death this morning in Hawke's Bay. Are you able to comment on that?
So that would be through the coronial process, but as I've said, we have 9 confirmed deaths at the moment.
Are you able to sort of put a figure on the number of people there are very grave concerns about at this point?
We triage the reports of people that are missing, and clearly those that we have heightened concerns for will come to the top. That is a small number, and it fluctuates day to day as we find people or they're accounted for. So it is a small number of the larger number that are uncontactable.
Small, is that sort of sub 10 or?
It'd be around that figure.
Okay.
I got a report in this morning from someone who, and I know you've ruled this out, so I'm just double checking really, so you can confirm this, but they said they knew someone who had found a family in a car all dead in Hawke's Bay. So
those rumours have come and gone over the last few days. We have to deal in the facts, and sometimes that takes a bit longer, and I can appreciate that can be frustrating. And over this operation, we've had many rumours put to us that have turned out not to be true, including about deaths. It's important that we don't get outside of our process or the coronial process, move resource or change our posture and tactics. So, yes, I'm telling you today that we do not have any unaccounted bodies.
What's the number on those that have been uncontactable? Yesterday it was around over 4,000?
Yes, 4,928. But 885 have reported safe. We're just in the process of reconciling those. That number is going to move around over the next few days as comms come back on, both driving numbers down as people are able to be found to be safe, but also allowing people to report other people missing, uncontactable. So that number is going to move around. It's not a stable number.
Do you know the location of those people?
Beg your pardon?
Do you know the location?
Yes, we do. They're right across the country, although, as you can expect, the majority, over half are in the eastern area.
Are there any sort of particular, regions or communities where there's a large number of these people?
I don't have it to that granularity, only the eastern area.
Yeah. Roger, was the tragedy at Esk Valley avoidable?
Well, Tropical Cyclone Gabrielle couldn't be avoided, but beyond that, I'm not quite sure what you're aiming your question at there.
Could there have been so sort of emerging reports of a possible lack of planning years gone by or preparedness? At 8:32 p.m. there was a message on Facebook from Hawke Civil Defence saying there's no reason to evacuate, and then by 3:19 for a lot of people it was too late. Is there any chance a valley-wide evacuation notice could have come out sooner or anything like that? People will be really wanting to know.
Look, I don't have the detail on the timeline of how that all played out, and in any case, I think for us, we're still in the declaration phase of this, and I feel that at this point, there will be an opportunity to review and reflect and look at what lessons should be learned, and I know that the CDM group will want to do that, but I think we need to give them the space at the moment to deal with what is a very urgent situation in front of them and just meet the needs of their community just at this time.
Roger, I had a question about Wairoa and Moana, because we were speaking to someone from there who said there were hundreds of people there who had very little to eat over a number of days. Are you aware of the problem there? And I wondered if it was one of those smaller communities your search teams were visiting.
I don't have a specific update on Wairoa Moana. However, I do know that the CDM group will be aware of those communities and where they are, and I'm sure they're making urgent efforts to reach them and ascertain their status.
What communities have you still not been able to contact?
I don't have a big long list. That is being run as a regional or local operation by the CDM groups, supported by responding agencies, police and FENS, but also NZDF, USAR and many others as well. So there is an ongoing effort to get to them as urgently as possible, and both of those groups that I spoke to this morning have that as their top priority for today.
You said before in Tairāwhiti that about 90% of communities have been reached. In Hawke's Bay, do you know what the...
They're probably a couple of, just a little bit behind in terms of where they're at. When I say behind, I mean that in time, because the event came through Tairāwhiti a little bit sooner than it did Hawke's Bay. But I spoke to the team this morning. They're forming up teams and further plans, and they're just hammering it today in terms of getting out to those communities. They know it's a priority.
What have been the issues in terms of getting to these communities sooner?
Oh, I think it's just resourcing and bandwidth. They're surging in resources from elsewhere. We've got USAR teams going in, NZ EMAT teams, and we've got Australian COBBers, assisting us as well. So there is a great effort going in, but it will take them a little bit of time to get around everybody.
And you're satisfied now that there's enough resources to be able to get to these places as soon as possible?
We're continuing to receive requests for additional personnel and so on from especially from Hawke's Bay, and we'll continue to meet those. And it's not just about adding staff, but it's also about rotating people through and giving the opportunity to rest as well.
And those international offers, is it looking at taking up any more assistance from overseas?
There are some other international offers on the table that we're looking at closely, and we're just working that through, but I don't have any further detail for you on that just at the moment.
What countries can you say?
I wouldn't want to sort of go into that at the moment. We're just working that through.
And on the power situation, do you have any numbers about people still without power?
Yes, I mean in Hawke's Bay, 39,620 without power, and so that's but that has come down. And I may have a national summary. I think the national total is 62,000.
So is that households or individuals?
Normally, I'd expect it to be households. You know, a power connection with a billing address. Mm.
Yeah. What are the sort of key concerns now in this phase?
Well, I think at the moment the priority is really around reaching those people that we haven't heard from and that the CDM groups are trying to reach in the next day or two, and just to make sure that we don't have a blind spot, or that we don't know what we don't know. We're in what I would call an emergency relief phase. So fortunately we seem to be through the most urgent part of life safety, getting people out of homes and out of trapped places, and now it's about getting food, water and shelter to people who are displaced. The next phase that's going to come is really that more sort of detailed community welfare assessment phase, about meeting the needs of people who are out of homes or can't go back in because they're red stickered or yellow stickered or whatever. On that sort of more building side, we're going to go into a building sort of a rapid assessment. We're going through that in some of the regions already, but in Hawke's Bay they've got to get into this as well eventually. And you've got that debris management sort of stuff to just take all the rubbish away. So there's a big job ahead. The regions are at slightly different phases. Auckland is, because it had that original event, is quite well down the track with a number of these things. They've already done 5,000 building assessments, for example. But all of them are going to have to get eventually to the point of some kind of transition to recovery. So we're going to have a bit of a national conversation around that as well.
Do you have any updated figures about numbers of displaced people? And is there any more detail about within that?
Yeah.
How many have actually lost their home?
So people in civil defence centres, nationally it's around about 1,500 still, and that fluctuates a little. And the largest numbers there are in the Hawke's Bay, where it's over 1,000 still. So in terms of displaced people overall, it's a little bit hard to say, because some people have gone out of their homes, but may be able to go back in eventually, once there's a safe clearance given. So I think for the time being, that the focus for us is getting people who are currently in civil defence centres into some kind of safe temporary accommodation, or back home if we can.
Forgive me if you've already mentioned this, but are there any particular areas of concern that within Hawke's Bay and Tairāwhiti regions that you haven't sort of managed to contact yet? Or?
Oh, look, I think in the last couple of days, Wairoa has been a particular focus in terms of getting some urgent assistance there. The Minister McAnulty and I had a chance to visit the community yesterday, talk to the Mayor, and the urgent call there was for fuel. They could see that food and water was starting to resolve itself, but they needed fuel in order to start moving vehicles around to deliver the food and the water, and also to help start the clean-up of the debris. So I'm pretty happy to see some really good progress in the last 24 hours. We surged in some additional staff from the New Zealand Emergency Management Assistance Team. They're on the ground there with good communications out, and that's enabled us to get some good flow of information. If BP can get some fuel through today by road, that's tremendous. We may have an option to also take some in by helicopter today as well.
And what was the latest with Gisborne's water?
They got it back on, managed to get a repair done to the water treatment fault that was discovered yesterday.
Okay.
So it's all good, like there's water running through the town, like people can use the taps?
Water is running again. I'd hesitate to describe it as all good. Let me just check my notes here. Yeah, no, that's pretty much what I have, that they've managed to get the water back on, and they've also got support there from NZF in terms of water treatment.
Lee, possibly for you, just of the almost 5,000 people that are currently being called unaccounted for, could you possibly put a geographical location on where those unaccounted for claims are coming from? Is there a lot of them from Wairoa, a lot of them from...
Yeah, as I said earlier, it would be my guess that half of them are from the Eastern District, Eastern Police District. I wouldn't go any more granular than that. We did have some in the early piece from Auckland, from Palmerston North, and from other, Coromandel and other affected communities. I mean, we would have that detail. I just don't have it on me at the moment. Last I looked was yesterday, and my guess would be half would be in the eastern area.
And the Napier Council have shared like a log that the police have on their website where people can log a missing persons. Do you roughly know how many people have been logged through that?
So I don't know if that's a link to our... I'm sorry, I'm unaware of what you're talking about there. Our official number is 4,928 people who are not contactable. I'm unaware of that.
We're also hearing some stories of people in the Hawke's Bay area who are having their homes either burgled or scoped out for burglaries. Can you give us an update on crime in the Hawke's Bay?
Well, what I would say is, business as usual for police carries on throughout these events anyway. We would take a hard line on anyone taking advantage of the state of emergency, and we will arrest and prosecute anyone we find doing that. At the same time, our communities are actually largely pulling together through all this, and I would say that would be overwhelmingly in the minority that was occurring.
We might take one more question, and then I think we've got to get going if there is one. Please.
Lastly, there are quite a few community events kind of happening around the country where people are bringing donated goods. I know you mentioned it before, but kind of what's your advice now? There are a lot, and a lot have already gathered large buses of donated goods. What would be your advice in reaction to that?
You mean on what to do with the goods?
What to do with it, yeah. They intend to drive trucks and buses up full of donated goods, which is a lovely incentive, but I understand.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the advice still stands. Cash is best. It's the most usable thing for the people at the other end. And unfortunately, donated goods creates quite a significant overhead, and it might not necessarily be well matched to the needs of the people on the ground. And then what happens is instead of responding civil defence staff, helping the community, they're managing, truckloads of donated stuff, which is well intentioned. I get it, but the emphasis is that cash donations to the relief funds are best. Thank you very much for your time.